Reverend Wendy celebrates the holiday with a talk entitled An Easter Message for Mystics. In this uplifting Easter message, Reverend Wendy invites you to see yourself as Jesus would see you and asks us to see ourselves differently.
At the beginning of the song, toward the beginning of the song, there is the line, if you could see you the way I see you, you'd start flying on your own. If you could see you the way I see you, you'd start flying on your own. So today is Easter Sunday morning. And yes, I'm going to be talking about Jesus because it's Easter Sunday morning. But I want to talk to you about my Jesus. I don't want to talk to you about the Jesus that I think has been hijacked by a lot of church. I want to talk about the mystical Jesus, the spiritual Jesus, the Jesus that I believe would be saying to us these very words. If you could see you the way I see you, you'd start flying on your own. That is not the theological Jesus. That's the mystical Jesus. To me, that's the real Jesus. Jesus was radical. He wasn't this gorgeous Italian-looking painting. He was Jewish. He was a gorgeous Jewish man, I imagine, but he didn't look like a Renaissance guy, right? He was radical, and his radical ideas, they don't seem so radical to us today, but this is 2,000 years later, and consciousness has evolved in those 2,000 years, and it will continue to evolve. He was a radical in his thinking for his day. He was an activist. He was absolutely spiritual, and he brought his spirituality into very real social issues in his day. And I think we are expected to do exactly the same thing. We won't, yes. We won't all show up and do it in the same way, but we do need to show up and do it. So he was a radical. He was an activist. He was absolutely a teacher, and he was clearly a mystic. So I'm not really interested in the church version of Jesus. I'm interested in the teacher and way shower. I'm interested in the spiritual mystic. I want to be able to see the way he saw. And that requires a mystical practice. A mystic is one who, through deep contemplation, seeks to obtain unity and absorption into and with the absolute. A mystic absolutely sees life differently than a non-mystic. Jesus taught from a place in which he saw life differently than most of the people who were listening to him. And that's part of the reason it got him into trouble. But he still planted seeds, enough seeds, and even though I think the church hijacked Jesus, enough of those seeds still live in people today, and enough of his message is still available to us today to begin to live our lives more like he would want. Remember those popular bracelets back in, I think it was the 1990s, that were about the slogan, the acronym WWDJ, what would Jesus do? They were very popular in the 1990s, but you know they began over 100 years ago. There was a Congregationalist minister in Topeka, Kansas, who came up with the idea in 1890 to challenge his congregation to live their lives more from the place, what would Jesus do? I want to say there's an even deeper question that we could be asking if we want to live from a more mystical place of oneness and spiritual depth in our own lives. And that would be to ask the question, what would Jesus want? And I actually think if he came back, he'd see a lot of things going on in his name that he would not be too happy about. Not at all. He was a mystic. Joseph Campbell said this about mystics: the psychotic drowns in the same waters in which the mystic swims with the light. The mystic sees life differently. Meister Eckhart, the 13th century German mystic, said, "Theologians may quarrel, but the mystics of the world speak the same language." The mystics of the world speak the same language. So what would a truly enlightened, awakened teacher, mystic, want of us? I absolutely am convinced that that kind of teacher would not be wanting or saying to us, "Look at me," but instead would be saying, "Look at what I'm pointing to. Look at what I have seen, and let me help you try to see that too." He would not be saying, "Set me apart from you, but let me show you what I have seen, that your life may begin to be transformed as my life is being transformed." There's no question that Jesus had a very real mystical experience with what we call God, what he called Abba, or Father. And it is because of that experience that he had, that real experience, that we are here today trying to understand something about him. I want to say, let's take him off of the church-built pedestal, take him off of this idea of being a great exception, and really understand that he is an example, and that his words, I think we ought to take quite literally when he said, "Follow me." He didn't say, "Worship me." He said, "Follow me." And so I want to talk to you briefly about what it means for a mystic, because I believe that we are mystics in this room. I believe that we want something different in our understanding of Jesus or any spiritual teacher. And so I think there are several things we have to get our arms around so we can step into that awareness. The first I would say is this, that with regard to Christianity, there's a wide gap between what the church would want of us or wants of us and what Jesus would want of us. A really wide gap. And I think it kind of comes down to just a couple of basic things. It seems to me present kinds of churches like New Thought churches don't fall into this category, but it seems to me that in quite a bit of what poses as Christianity is really more churchianity than it is Christianity. Okay? And so, and there are some good things that are done in churchianity, but I think there is an equal amount that is damaging and is damaging and harmful. The two basic things are the church wants and needs control and obedience. And hell is a really good thing to use for control, and guilt and fear and manipulation are really good things to use for control. And the promise that if you accept this person as your personal Lord and Savior, you're guaranteed this place in heaven. That's really a lot of control. A lot of control. But Jesus didn't say those things. And do you know that the Pope has come out and declared that hell is not a place? Did you know that? Go look it up when you go home. Go look at. We've known that for a very long time in New Thought, but I'll let it go at that. Jesus would want or need neither control nor obedience, but he would want of us that we look at what he was pointing to and that we try to see that and understand that as well. He challenged the religion of his day, so much so that it got him in tremendous trouble. But he was a good Jew. He understood his Jewish religious roots. But he also understood, as Bishop John Shelby Spong would say, that religion is man-made, but God is not. Religion is man-made, but God is not. I think he was trying to transcend religion and move us into spiritual awakening. That's what the mystic path is all about. It's about answering your call to your spiritual awakening. A second point is I think that what he would want of us is not worship, but worthship. Worthship. Think about some of the main things he taught. He said, you are the light of the world. You are the light of the world. That's about your worth. Would you not agree? Your second service, you can do better than that. Yes, that's about your worth. And he did not say, only white people are the light of the world. He did not say, only heterosexuals are the light of the world. He made no qualifiers, right? No qualifiers. You are the light of the world. Worthship. He said to us, the things that I do, greater things than these, shall you do. He didn't give us all of the instructions on how to do it, but he gave us a fair number, and I'm going to talk briefly about some of those. Greater things than these shall you do. Was he putting himself up on a pedestal when he said that? No, he was saying, he was putting his arms around us, if you will, or was pulling us from behind, saying, you can do this too. What is that? Is that worship? No, that's worthship. And there are other points along that same line that I could share with you. And so the argument would be that he said, follow me, not worship me, follow me. In the Sermon on the Mount, he gave us some instructions on how to do that. Some of my favorite part in the Gospels is the Sermon on the Mount. We've come to call it the Sermon on the Mount. He didn't call it the Sermon on the Mount. And in part of the beginning of it, he gives us the Beatitudes. And those are statements, they're really affirmations about states of consciousness that we as a mystic are to step into and practice. And then he really got on a roll. The Beatitudes are kind of easy in some ways, and then he really got on a roll in his sermon, as ministers are often want to do. And he started contrasting the old religion, his old religion, to what he felt we needed to do and be. And he said such things as, you have heard it said of old, he's quoting the Torah now, you have heard it said of old, don't murder. But I say to you, don't even get angry. I can live with the first one really easy. But personally, I haven't mastered the second one yet. Have you? No, I know you haven't. They said, don't commit adultery. But I say, don't even look with lust. They said of old, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, tit for tat. That's my words, not his words or the Torah, but an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist. Turn the other cheek. That's a pretty tough list to follow, would you not say? A pretty tough list to follow. But the beauty of it is we don't have to take it all in one fell swoop. The beauty of it is understanding who and what we really are, and that our journey is a journey of worthship, and it is a journey of beginning to see ourselves as a teacher, a mystic, an enlightened being such as Jesus would see us. Because when we can begin to see ourselves as he would see us, we will recognize that we can start flying on our own. We will realize that we can step up to our greatness, right? Those are tough marching orders, but those are the marching orders. It is to be able to look at ourselves and to look at one another through the eyes of a mystic. That's what I believe he would want. That's the Jesus that I understand from studying and reading not only the Gospels, but many scholarly works about him as well. Here is a thought from a man that I respect tremendously. Many of you have heard me reference him in classes I teach as well as from the platform. And the person is Bishop John Shelby Spong. He is now a retired Episcopalian bishop. He has done a lot to try to revive Christianity, correct Christianity, change and get rid of the churchianity aspect of Christianity Because at the very heart, what Jesus tried to communicate are the same spiritual truths, really, that, for example, the Buddha tried to communicate. Because spiritual truth is spiritual truth. It's going to show up in and through any enlightened teacher. So Bishop Swang said, Easter is not about the myth of a resuscitated physical body of a man 2,000 years ago, but something much more important, needed, achievable, and believable. I'm going to repeat that, because that's pretty gutsy. Not for me as a New Thought minister to say, but that's pretty gutsy for an Episcopalian bishop to say. Easter is not about the myth of a resuscitated physical body of a man 2,000 years ago. So he's saying it's not about physical resurrection, but something much more important, needed, achievable, and believable. He says it is not about the divine becoming human, meaning God becoming man through Jesus, but about the human becoming, discovering the divine. I can stretch into that, can you? I can reach for that. I may falter plenty of times, but it's something that I can aspire to. Not about the divine becoming human, but about the human becoming the divine. If you could see you the way I see you, you would let your light shine. If you could see you the way I see you, you would step up to your greatness. If you could see you the way I see you, you would start flying on your own. If you could see you the way I see you, you would get out of your own way. You would answer your call to your personal spiritual awakening. And the world needs that from each and every one of us now. Namaste.
Many people enjoy Reverend Wendy's talks and meditations and aren't able to attend the Unity Center in person. If you're part of our extended family from around the world and would like to help support the Unity Center, please go to our website or download our free app, which offers even more ways to connect with the Unity Center. Namaste.